With us now is Anita Friedman. She is the chairperson of the Women's International Zionist Organization. Anita, thank you so much for being with us here in the studio. I mean, the statistic is just horrifying. And behind each number, each stat, it's a real person and a real family that's been abused. But 300% increase in domestic violence cases since March. What explains that?
Absolutely, Jeff. Look, this is a problem that we've had for many, many years. But as you can imagine, when the pandemic is happening, the abuser and the abused people are just jailed with their abuser 24/7. Also remember, the economic situation of these people has declined tremendously because of the coronavirus. We have seen not only more people coming to find help, but we're finding also there's new families that are coming into the cycle of violence. And that explains, we see a 250% uptick in the cases that the Ministry of Social Benefit is taking care of.
I was going to ask about that because, I mean, the growth, it's so exponential. Is it, families that have an abuser in the family that had previous instances of abuse, and because of the pandemic or the loss of a job or the loss of income, they're again acting out? Or is it new cases entirely where, because of the lockdown, for the first time in the household, we're seeing violence?
I think both. And also we're seeing heightening of the alertness of people, and also an awareness of women that they need to seek help. So we're seeing those numbers up there. Look, we just had WIZO every year has a special committee that relates about everything that's happening in the world regarding violence. We see this a worldwide effect. We're calling it the pandemic inside the pandemic. And one of the things that we're trying to raise awareness also is of the public at large, because this is a societal problem. This is not the problem of a specific woman or a specific family. It happens everywhere.
Here in Israel, tell me more about the work that you're doing with some lawmakers to try and push for some new legislation, new bills about this issue.
Okay, so as you said, today there is calling the Knesset to pass a new legislation that will make violent men in the courts go for therapy, as you say, which is...
But that can't happen now anyway, right? A judge can decide to order that.
But they're not doing it. That's what we're seeing. The judicial system is not stepping up. Not only is not stepping up, but actually sometimes they identify with the abuser and not the victim, and we see it over and over. Look, the Ministry of Welfare has many places where they can treat men, but we see only a quarter of the people treated being men. So we feel that unless this is not responded in a holistic way, WIZO has a specific hotline for violent men. It's unique in the world, and we're the only ones that have it here, where men call when they're in the cycle of violence. And we try to advise them to diffuse the situation, and then we try to send them to therapy. But it's not an easy task.
I want to note, of course, this year already, 20 women have been killed by domestic partners. Millions of dollars, millions of shekels, millions of dollars have been promised by government ministers in the last year and a half. 3 separate elections, 3 separate campaigns, the violence against women in this country going up and up. And there's all this talk about saving money to open new shelters, open new treatment facilities, help women with children escape violence. Is the money going to where it needs to go?
Okay, in 2017, as you said, they passed a law with budget and everything. We haven't seen all the money. We have seen only part of it, and after a long pressure. Now, what we see this year is that the awareness has changed. They are planning, the welfare ministry is planning to open 2 new shelters. There's only 14 shelters in Israel. 2 of them are under WIZO. But what we did in May, we came to the Ministry of Welfare, and together they funding it. Of course, we opened an emergency shelter for women during the pandemic, because as you can imagine, when a woman is abused, you cannot put her in a regular shelter if she hasn't had those 14 days for us to make sure that she is clean of corona. So we've been working with that, and we've been working with the Ministry of Welfare. And that's something new that's been happening.
I know WIZO also, pushing for legislation, pushing to open new shelters. A part of this also is awareness. And I know that there's a new campaign underway now, kind of teaming up with some of the bigger brands in Israel. Tell us more about this campaign.
Okay, so for the first time, we've teamed up with a PR company, Barnett, and they set us up with the biggest companies. We're talking about Strauss, we're talking about Maccabi, we're talking about Isracard, we're talking about Bituach Yashir, all these companies that they're doing a sponsorship. They are showing at the end of their pirsomot, of their
the commercials, their ads.
Commercials, they stop it and they speak about the issue. So it's been giving a big platform thanks to this company that is helping us. And the other thing is we are very much about raising the awareness in the public and the education. The education is something that we harp on it all the time, because without educating youngsters, children, young women and men, we will never have a change in the society.
Absolutely. Very well said. Anita, thank you so much for being with us and the work that you're doing with the Women's International Zionist Organization to fight back against this, sadly, this worsening issue in Israel and around the world. Great to have you in the studio. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Jeff.